Hey folks. Sometimes, things go a little differently. Video I'm working on is sort of taking a little longer than planned, and during those sort of cold and miserable nights that we seem to have at the moment, sometimes you do weird things like searching for things that you don't expect on auction sites, and I was doing a search and this thing came up. This is the Wico Command Control for a certain grey toaster looking console, which I know some people don't like. I have mixed fondness for. Not a massive amount of nostalgia, but there's a few games I do enjoy on it. And it's interesting because when I think Wico, I always think of joysticks like their Command Control series that came out for the 8-bits. Like, these are some of this is the classic Wico Command Control back top for the, Atari, C64 and whatnot. They've also got the ball top, and there was also one which was a pistol grip. And there was also a variant where you could change the handle, so you would put the bat on, or you could put the ball top on, or you could put the pistol grip on. And it's quite interesting because, I think of those joysticks, and when it comes down to it, I'm actually not the biggest fan of them. They're sort of stiff, but they've got a lot of travel. So like the movement travel of the stick is a bit long, and there's no auto fire, and they're sort of, got a setup where you can put them on your desk and play like that. I think they work well. For me and my handheld setup, the way I play, not so much. But so I got this. It wasn't ridiculous. It wasn't that it wasn't cheap, but it wasn't expensive. If you know how that factor goes. And the reason I was curious is because, when you think about it, you play games on an NES using, this is Hyperkin's Cadet, which I quite like. I don't have any official OEM pads. And I picked this up, but this feels really good. It sort of gives the right muscle memory of the original pad, but because it's contoured on the back, like that, it's a little more comfortable to hold. It's an alright cheapo controller, if you don't want to pay out the nose for second-hand OEM ones. But this interested me because of, look at how it plays. So if this Wico stick, you hold it vertically like this. So in effect, your right hand here, and this is the A button, then you've got start and select, which is already messes with your muscle memory because let's get a little closer. So that's start and that's select, and it's a little opposite. And then of course on the side you've got buttons here which are B. So it's very much, if I'm behind, because I'm behind the desk, it's sort of like holding this. And so it was something I picked up for curiosity's sake. And as always when you look at something like this, the real question is, how does it actually play with games? And so before we do that, there wasn't much more than just the stick and the little instruction leaflet. Ooh, the little instruction leaflet which shows how to connect it and how it all works. I do love that facsimile. Try and bring that a little close. I do love that facsimile of the NES itself in there. I do love that. But so basically, I set it up, had to play off a bunch of games, and in terms of how it went, well, I'll roll some footage and sort of talk about it. So the obvious pick to start with for me was a bunch of shooters, your Gradiuses, your Life Forces and whatnot. And what I found was, with Gradius particularly, the A button was B mapped to the top button, is really frustrating to hit rapidly, which you really need to do in Gradius. You need to really slam that button down to blast through enemies, especially when you want to try and get the enemies which are at the start of the stage, the ones that you'll clear out and they'll give you a weapon pickup. Having B on the side buttons, on the other hand, worked pretty well. It was convenient, it was easy to touch, and really didn't find that getting in the way. I'll admit, I kind of wish the controls were flipped around for Gradius, which is interestingly the case with Tiger Heli. Tiger Heli, the controls were flipped around. The B button on the side was your primary shot, and the A button is your bomb button, and that worked pretty well. I found that playing that, it was pretty good to enjoy. And then the next sort of thing is racing games. I had a play of, it went to good old F1 Race, which is fairly simple, and I found F1 Race really fun really comfortable to use this for, because in effect, you're holding you're gripping the stick, you're holding the A button down, and that's your acceleration. You don't really need to break down that much in F1 Race. Throwing the gear down is really enough when things get critical. And then of course up and down are your gear controls. And admittedly on occasion for me, I did find myself accidentally flipping down or up a gear when I wasn't ready to. it kind of did impact the game a bit for me, and I'll admit, given another chance, I'd probably want to give it another shot. I think it may not have been the best, but it worked. Carrying on with that a bit, I did find Rad Racer actually pretty good with it. Because in Rad Racer, again, you're holding A to accelerate, then of course you push up for the boost, and so you're kind of holding the stick, you're pushing up and then doing diagonals to turn. Although compared to your D-pad, the diagonal motion is a little tighter, so it does work. It works reasonably well for that. What else? Then, of course, I tried Contra. So Contra, you typical run and gun on the NES. I found it okay. Again, I found it okay because, again, A button to jump is on the stick and B button on the sides is what you use to shoot. So you're sitting there running, shooting, blasting, doing all of that stuff, and it kind of worked out all right. Like I still felt myself like getting diagonals a bit confused at points and pulling down. It wasn't quite as clean as it should be, but it kind of worked. You could kind of play through it with a fair bit of practice. A game that did work really well for me though when trying it out was Starluster, which is a great underrated Famicom space shooter by Namco, and that worked really well because the B button there is used to shoot, and A is your turbo boost, is like your thrusters. And so I was sitting back, being able to just move the stick around, playing, holding the button down, and generally it worked out pretty well. Like you could comfortably hold the stick, comfortably press the turbo button, and keep blasting. That was something that I found to work really nice indeed. And also, carrying on from that, I tried a bit of Ultimate Air Combat, which is an interesting one that I think needs to get a video on at some stage. And it was it wasn't quite the same. I mean, there the A button was used to shoot, but you could thankfully hold it down to continuously fire, and then your B button was to fire missiles and select and change missiles. It worked alright there. I admit, I kind of wish this had a pistol grip. I think that's actually what would have made this stick better, is having a pistol grip with the A button on a trigger, and I could imagine that probably working that well. And probably a micro switch stick. But yeah, Ultimate Air Combat worked pretty well there, and then even in the secondary modes where you completed the mission and you were then tackling like a target in this sort of isometric-y, desert strikey kind of view, still felt pretty good to control. Some of the other stuff that worked really well was a lot of pure arcadey stuff. Millipede, the adaptation that HAL Labs did, worked really good. Again, you're hitting the A button to shoot, and so you could just sit back, comfortably hold the stick, push the A button in, and keep smashing it to keep shooting. It worked really well there. Gyrus was another one, that old school arcade action where, again, even though Gyrus is actually, of course, using the B buttons to shoot, and the A button is the special weapon, which is a little weird for Gyrus because you have that extra additions on a simpler arcade game. And so I guess that's really a bunch of the stuff I played. I don't think I'm going to use this on a regular basis. There's a lot of games where, honestly, having a gamepad like this, it's what the system was designed around. It's what the games play best to. Finding the command control really was an interesting curio for me. I just thought, hey, it looked cool, just for a slice of history. It's based on a design they used. They made a ColecoVision version of the controller, and this area where Start and Select is essentially where you would get your keypad, and it's sort of embossed in because it's an area where you'd be able to mount the overlays, little keypad cover overlays with describing what the buttons do. And it's obviously they reused the mold and thought it was a cheap sort of thing. And in that case, I could sort of see it working there a bit better. It's sort of reminiscent of the feel of that stick. But of course, generally, I think for the kind of games I want to play, I do like being able to easily get access to A and B, as we see here with the Cadet. And that's really what the games were designed around. And so the command control really is a curio for me. It's a curio, it's an oddity. And it's cool. It was a cool find to have, but it's certainly not going to be something I would play with on a more permanent basis. So, I think I'm going to leave it there. I think there's not really much more to say about it. I'm certainly not going to tear it apart, because I'm not sure I could put it back together. As always, I hope you enjoyed it. I know this is not really the kind of normal stuff I do, but it is an extra video, and those are the kinds of videos where I do get to go a little wider than the norm. If you enjoyed it, do leave a thumbs up and some thoughts. If you've actually tried this, maybe you've had a different or better experience than me, I would love to know. Right now, I'm sort of convinced that it's this curio, but I could be wrong there. If you haven't already, please do consider subscribing to the channel. It would help very much. And, if you really enjoy seeing both the more detailed game reviews I do on the main weeks, as well as these sort of offshoots of slightly odder things from now and then, hopefully that'll convince you to stick by. If you do really enjoy the work and really want to help me continue to grow the channel out and whatnot, I do have a Patreon feed. You get likely early access to episodes, occasional bits of little behind-the-scenes tidbits, and more. Links in the description. But most importantly, as always, thank you all so very much for taking the time out to enjoy this little video.